Hi there, I'm Carolyn Peeler, and I'm delighted to be with you in Ellen Hutson's classroom for today, the final day of the 12 Tags of Christmas with a Feminine Twist celebration. We're going to jump right on in and get into this really fun tag featuring Concord and Ninth and Essentials by Ellen. We're going to get started with this beautiful set. It's called Stripe Builder. It's great, and we are going to use one of the Ranger tags. This is a number 8 tag as a template. We're using this cardstock is Peanut Cluster by Basil, and you'll notice that the original tag that I'm using is a bit too long for the stamp. So what I've done is I've used the number 8 tag as my guide, and then I simply trimmed the bottom a little bit. And then finally for the Aqua, which is the Tailored Expression Saltwater Taffy cardstock, for that I cut that slightly smaller than the Peanut Cluster tag, so that I'm going to have a layered tag with the peanut cluster on the bottom and the saltwater taffy on the top. Now to get my stamp ready, I am inking it with some Distress ink in Tumbled Glass. I've only inked 3 rows of it simply because I don't need to ink anymore. My tag is not any wider than 3 stripes. So once I've applied the ink, I'm going to center it on top of my aqua tag and then press down. And I'm always so paranoid. I don't know about you, but when I stamp down, I always give it like some extra little shoves to make sure, because I hate it when a stamp isn't evenly applied onto a surface. So as you can see, I'm actually probably overdoing it a little bit here, but I'm doing that in order to try to make sure that I get a smooth impression. Now this is a little bit bright, and you'll see later I'm going to tone it down. For the next step, I'm going to prep the Laurel Wreath that I'm going to be using as a focal point on the tag. That is an Essentials by Ellen die. And to get ready, I'm using this Ranger craft mat, and I love this thing. It's so awesome. And I'm simply drawing on it directly with 3 different colors of green distress markers. Now, I've used distress markers. You can use a different brand. You just need to make sure it's a water-based marker. Color it on a craft mat and you're good to go. As you can see, I colored those 3 colors all around, and then just dragged, let's just say English isn't my forte, watercolor paper across the surface, and then I've heat set it. I'm going to repeat this process several times, and you can see that as you dry it, each time you drag your paper through, you're going to get more of these little dots. In this case, I noticed that I wanted more of the Evergreen Bough color popping through. It's a little bit of a brighter green, so that's why here I showed you that in that particular step I'm doing just with the 1 color. You can also see I'm doing this on a scratch paper that I've already messed. You can see there's like half a Christmas tree in it. This is paper that has been hung around. I've used it for several different projects because you only need, as you can see here, a small portion of it. So you can use this on some scratch paper that's not perfectly usable. So I've cut a piece of paper approximately the same, a little bit bigger than the die, putting the die on it, and then I usually like to just secure my die. Here I'm using masking tape. You can use washi or scotch as you wish. So run that through your die and set it aside. For this next step, you can remember earlier I told you I was going to tone down that aqua. I thought it was a little bit bright. So what I've done is I've cut a strip of vellum that is the same width as the tag, and I have used Ranger, their double-sided adhesive. I stuck the vellum on the double-sided adhesive, then I've peeled it off. Now I'm sticking it onto the tag. So once again, the vellum was already cut to the same width as the tag, not the same height, but the same width. I put it onto the double-sided adhesive. Now I've stuck it onto the tag, and I'm simply going to trim to size with my scissors. Using this method just helps soften everything up. So if you stamp something and you find your colors a bit too bright and you don't mind it being a little bit muddled, you can go ahead and use vellum. It's a great tip for softening things up. Now we're going to get on to the illustration part of the project, and this is such a cute stamp set. It's the Elf set designed by Julie Ebersol for Essentials by Ellen. We're stamping it with the Ranger Black Archival ink onto watercolor paper, and I use the Ranger watercolor paper as well. And now I'm laying out my distress markers. Once again, if you have a different brand of water-based markers, other brands will work as well. I'm just using the distress because it's what I have here. From top to bottom, I'm layering Evergreen Bough, then Forest Moss, then Peeled Paint, Broken China, and finally Pumice Stone. But don't worry about that one because I actually never use it. But I thought I was going to when I laid them out. So I've got my strips of color. Then I misted some water right beside the strips of color. And now I'm using my little paintbrush, and this is a Zig watercolor brush. It's a detailer brush, and I'm starting to paint. Now this is going to be a little process, and I wanted to show you the whole painting process. So if you want to fast forward in the video and kind of bypass this painting part, you're more than welcome to do that. That is at 8:52 when I'm pretty much done with the painting. So if you want to zip forward there, you're more than welcome to, but otherwise I'll kind of explain what I'm doing here. So I'm going to get started with the Evergreen Bough, painting the shirt on this little guy. And what I ended up deciding to do is I decided to do him sort of in two main colors, with this sort of aqua color and green. And there's the aqua, it's called Evergreen Bough, but it's sort of an aqua-ish color. This Evergreen Bough, it's kind of a greeny blue color, which is lovely. So I've done his tunic, his shirt with that color, and the top of his hat, and then his leggings, or his tights. I don't know, what do elves wear? They're not leggings, I guess. But anyway, for that I used the peeled paint, and then forest moss I used on his little pointed collar, on the little pom-pom at the top of his hat, and as an accent color on his mittens. His mittens, the main color is with the peeled paint. The same with the brim of his hat. The main color is peeled paint, but I came in with the forest moss and did a couple of accents with that. One thing that I did as I colored is that I laid a layer of color, and then I heat set it, as you saw there just a couple seconds ago. And then after I heat set it, I would come in again and paint again, and that's a way to build up your color and get that nice layered look. One of the things that I personally love about watercolor is I actually don't really like it when all my colors totally blend together. I like seeing some of those sort of hard edges. And so by heat setting in between, you're going to end up getting those sort of hard edges where the edge of the water was when it dried. And so for me personally, because I really like that look, that's why doing the watercolor in this way makes a lot of sense for me, because that's what I like. So you can go ahead and just color and really sort of play with this to your heart's content. What I ended up sort of doing is I tried to make my color a little bit darker on the left side of his body. Well, I guess right side if you're him, but if you're looking down at the image, it's the left side of his body that I did the paint a little bit darker on. It's very subtle. It actually doesn't show up super, super well with the photos. However, when you look at it in person, you definitely can tell. As well, sort of under his pointed collar, I also tried to make the ink a little bit deeper there, a little bit richer, darker. And I did that by simply putting more layers of the color on. So the more layers you put on, the deeper, the richer the color is going to look. It's going to have a bit more depth. So I just continued playing here, and so we'll let this go until I bring in the next color. And here we go. Next we're going to stamp the greeting. And I'm sorry, I missed previously that I had already brought in the next color, and that was the pink for his face, and that's spun sugar, and it was simply 2 dots of spun sugar on his cheeks. So I put the spun sugar onto the craft mat and then dotted it on his cheeks. Alright, so first here, don't get thrown off by the little pink elf there. That was a first incarnation of the card, and it did not work. So he's sitting there, but he was replaced, but don't let him throw you off. So I've stamped the greeting. The greeting is from that same stamp set, the elf stamp set. I've stamped it simply onto white cardstock with a black ink. I use black memento, but you could use the archival ink that we used earlier to stamp the elf. Really just whatever black ink you have on hand will be great. So I've stamped it on a piece of white cardstock, glued that onto the bottom of the card, and then I put a strip of vintage note paper on the bottom. And now I'm gluing on the Laurel Wreath. So we've cut that out with the die cutter, and just simply gluing it flat onto the vellum. And our tag is shaping up. Next, I take it to my sewing machine and I've sewn a straight line across the top and a zigzag line where the white meets the striped paper. And I've also now glued it onto the peanut cluster cardstock that's in the background. The next step is to add a little bit of sparkle to this little sucker. So this is the Wink of Stella clear pen. This is a lovely pen because it works, because it's clear, it works with any color. It just has a beautiful iridescence to it. So I'm simply tracing over top of the word Mary, and it's the only word that I'm doing. I really wanted the Mary to have the sparkle and not the rest. So I'm simply tracing over top of that, and it has the most beautiful little shimmer. You can see a little bit of it there. All right, as we finish up, I wanted to create some sort of finishing tag, the tag element at the top. And so I've taken an Avery tag from an office supply store. I just bought it at Staples, a big box of it years ago. I'm still going through these tags. At any rate, so I took one of these the little reinforcement that's at the top of the tag. As you can see, I just peeled it off with my finger. And now I'm going to glue it into place at the top of this tag. And I think this gives the tag a real beautiful finishing touch. Once you've glued it on there and the glue is set, as you can see, I'm holding it there because you have that stitch line. It'll take a little bit of time for it to set there. But once it has set, then you're going to take your Crop-A-Dile and pop a hole exactly where the hole is in the reinforcement. And after you've done that, you will take an eyelet and pop it into that hole and then set the eyelet in place. And that just gives your whole project a finishing touch. I also should mention the elf is now on our project as well, and he was put on using a low profile 3D adhesive so that he pops off the front of the tag a little bit. And there you have it. I'm finished with the project, and I really love this sucker. I think I'm going to actually put him on the front of a greeting card. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for participating in the 12 Tags of Christmas with a Feminine Twist. This is such a great tradition that Ellen Hutson does each year, and I know you'll join me in thanking her for starting it all those years ago and for allowing us to have fun with it every Christmas season. So I hope you have a great day, and let me know if you have any questions in the comment field.